Here we are again at the old fart in the kitchen, and today is going to be an experimental day because I have never made this recipe before, even in jest. So you will either see me succeed or fail horribly. But I have long missed the ability to eat bread. And unfortunately, with my diet, I have to stay away from carbs. I have to stay away from sugar, all those wonderful things. So no pasta, no bread, no cakes, no tarts, no wonderful things like that. But I have really, really missed bread. And I did a big search on the internet to try to find alternative to flour breads, and I found one using almond flour, which of course is a nut, so it doesn't have the kind of carbs that grains do. So, yeah. God, sorry, I forgot. I've got my hair done. I've got my wardrobe all done. Hold on. I'll quickly deal with this for you. Okay, just a sec. I don't want to appear unshaven. Let's see, how do we do this? Oh, there we go. All right. Okay, I think that's better. I learned this trick at a Sweet 16 party for our goddaughter. All the girls were having their phones up. I couldn't figure out why. Then I saw them applying makeup and eyeshadow and everything. Brilliant. Who needs a mirror when you've got a selfie cell phone? Okay, so where were we? Yes, almond flour bread. So it just takes almond flour. I've already measured this out, 2 cups. Almond flour, 4 eggs, warmed up to room temperature, I'm told is the best. Some warm water. Now, some of the recipes call for flaxseed meal to be put in it, and some call for psyllium husks. So since I have both, I decided to split it between the two. So we've got our flaxseed and psyllium husks in here. And I'm just adding one other thing for a little bit of texture, which is some almond meal, not flour, but meal. It's a little coarser because I kind of like a little coarseness. And then we have a bit of salt. One of them asked for sea salt. So I'm going with the Himalayan pink salt, which is ancient sea salt, filled with all sorts of wonderful minerals. And then we're going to have what is that? A half cup of melted butter. Some call for coconut oil, a 1/4 cup of that. Everyone has a slightly different mix on it. And then in order to get the thing to rise, because we don't use yeast, we're using baking powder instead. And in the process, we have to take the eggs and really beat them up so they get a lot of air into them. And that air will then bake into the bread, making those nice little air holes. And let's see, parchment paper, which we have to have for the baking tin. Now, it's been suggested that you go with about an 8-inch by 4-inch baking tin. I happen to have some because I used to bake like crazy. I love making bread. Now, the black ones absorb and retain and transmit the heat better than the aluminum ones or silver ones, which kind of tend to reflect it. So it makes a nice crust around the sides and the bottom of the bread. But you have to put the parchment paper in so that you can then easily lift the finished loaf out of the tin. So parchment paper. So always is good to have a little measuring tape. So there's your 8 inches by your 4, well actually 4.5 at the top, but it's more like 3.5 at the bottom. And you'll be all set. So, fingers crossed, pray for me. We'll see how this goes. Because, of course, we're going to have to put this in a bigger mixing bowl. I can't have all of this here the whole time. Good pair of kitchen shears for making nice, clean cuts on the parchment paper, which often has a little cross hatch so you can make straight lines. Okay, just a minute. So now the next step. We have to beat these eggs until they're double in volume. Well, you can do this by hand, I've been told. I'm not sure that I could. I suppose you could use one of those hand mixers like a mom and dad used to use. Mom and dad, my father was never in the kitchen, he only ate what came out of the kitchen. But I helped my mom in the kitchen a lot, especially when it came to making chocolate frosting and things like that. These beating things, the old mix master and everything. Oh God, that was so good. And cleaning up. Oh well, never mind. Oh, the stove has gotten up to 350 degrees or 180 centigrade. It always has to let me know about these things. At least I'm glad our refrigerators don't keep telling us we've had the door open too long. So we will open the eggs, beat them up until they're twice the size, which gets lots of air into them. Now I understand why French chefs have a dish towel tucked into their waistband. So now we just need to beat them up until they're twice the size. Oh, looks as though we've gotten there. Oh, by the way, these wands, this particular one is made by Braun, are one of the greatest things for kitchens. They have these different attachments that you stick on. You just put it on like that. And they have choppers. They've got all kinds of things you can use with them. And so they're really, really great. I'm not that expensive. So I would suggest anyone who starts working in the kitchen doing this kind of thing to get something like this. But you can always use whatever you've got. All right. So those are the eggs. Next step. Okay, now we've arrived at the next step. We've done the wet ingredients over there, and they're just kind of sitting there, getting comfortable. So now we do the dry ingredients. Now they say we mix everything all up together, but to be honest with you, I like to put any flours through a sieve because, as you can see, there are these little lumps that form with a lot of flours. In this case, I'm discovering that the almond flour seems to have more lumps than regular flour, so I'd like to have it as smooth as possible, and I'll do this in a couple stages. I actually think a spatula will be better for this. Yeah. And there we are. It looks beautifully fine. Lovely. Okay, well, it's better than it was. So now we add the other dry ingredients. There's the flaxseed and the psyllium. See the psyllium? That's just actually what we take in the morning, the psyllium. Now that we get to our ripe old age and need a little help with our digestion. Okay, half a teaspoon of the salt. You know something, I don't like a lot of salt. I'm going to go with a quarter teaspoon. There we go. So I say this is the pink Himalayan salt, and they call for an entire tablespoon. This is Rumford baking powder. Not baking soda, quite different, baking powder. You must get that absolutely right. This is what takes the place of yeast and makes this bread rise, along with the bubbles we're putting into it. There we go. From the mixing things here. Okay, our next step is just to quickly blend these things together. And now we're going to add the liquids. Now we have the wet ingredients, and we are supposed to blend the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients just being the eggs at the moment. And we're supposed to, I remind you, this is the first time I've done it, slowly into the eggs, incorporating it slowly and smoothly. I can see why they have you do it in this order. Okay, you can see that it's getting a lot more sticky in consistency, more like a dough. And then we're going to have to add the last of the wet ingredients, the melted butter and the water. Okay, and then they want you to add the melted butter, which you can see. Get that mixed in before we add the water. There must be a reason for it. I will take them at their word. They say, some of them say beat it in. I don't know if you want to beat it. I don't think my mixer would be able to beat it in, but we can certainly fold it in. And there we are. So we go to the next step. So now, here we are. We're going to line the pan. Now, none of the recipes I read say that you need to put oil or anything on the pan, but to be honest with you, since I always do, whether I ever use this or not, I think it might help this to stick to the sides and prevent any possible leak through from sticking. So the bottom of the pan is the most important. And here I call on my cooking consultant, my wife, and so I'm just using a little bit of canola oil just to cover it to make sure we don't get anything sticking if it decides it wants to stick. And since you can never double guess ingredients, they have their own minds, I always like to make sure that I'm well covered. Okay, we'll put that away. I just use a little brush from the hardware store, a little 1-inch brush. Kitchen stores tend to make a lot of money on all these extras. Okay, there you go, see? It helps it stick to the side, just like I hope it would. Okay, and then this is going to have to, oh no, it goes this way, that's right. This particular roll actually cut perfectly. I just cut it crosswise, and all of these bits happen to fit in just perfectly. Getting the corners, since this is a kind of a wedge-shaped pan, as you can see, we have a few corners, sort of like wrapping a Christmas present. You have to flatten them out a bit so they don't take up too much room of the dough. So there we go. There's our pan, all fitted with its inside coat. And we will just put that aside for the moment. Okay, now the next step, I'm reliably informed, is actually to go ahead and put this bread batter into the bread pan that we've already prepared in advance. Now, let's see how this is going to work. I'll use this. This is a lot stickier and wetter than most bread batters that I've used. You want to get it so it gets right down into the corners. That I know. Well, we got it this far. Now they say to shape it, shape the top of it, either with a spatula or with your hands. Well, this is going to get all over my hands, so I'm going to just go wash my spatula, spray it with a little Mazola spray so it doesn't stick, and we'll see what happens. So, I have cleaned off the spatula, sprayed it with some canola oil, a little white, and we'll see if that will help shape the top of the loaf. Well, seems to be a bit anyway. Push it down. Now we're ready to take this and put it in the oven. Okay, come over here. We're all panned and ready to go, so now we just put it in the oven for approximately an hour, maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more. The way you tell whether it's done is, one, is it a bit brown? Has it risen? But mainly by putting a toothpick or a skewer or something else into the loaf, pulling it out and make sure there's nothing sticking to it. If there's nothing sticking to it, it is essentially done. But if you want more of a crust on the top, you leave it in longer. So I found that about an hour and 10 minutes did that. Okay. That was silly. It's cold. I didn't need to use these. See you in an hour. So now it's been about an hour and 10 minutes, and we're going to see how this thing looks. Ouch. Hot. Well, that looks like an actual loaf of bread. Not so bad. So now we need to let it sit here and cool for about 30 minutes at least. Apparently it needs that amount of time to kind of settle and firm itself up. If we start earlier, it would be a problem. Now, regular bread, of course, we can cut right into, tear it apart, slather it with butter. But this we have to let sit for a little while, let it relax, pull itself together. So in 30 minutes, it's a date. Half an hour later or so, it's cooled down nicely, nice crust. So now our trick is going to be to lift it out, cut off the slice, and have a test. Okay, let's see. There it comes, straight out, no problems. Doesn't that look nice? What a lovely loaf that is. Okay, so actually to cut it, it's still nice and warm, so the butter will melt nicely. So, cuts beautifully. So now, the test. The taste test. Butter. My diet allows me to have butter. Not pasta, not carbs, but butter. That is delicious. It has sort of a natural sweetness to it. There's no sugar. That's great. And you can use it for all those things you use bread for. It has almost a little texture of kind of a banana bread or something like that. So a little heavier than regular bread, but it's soft. It's not hard. It's not dry. It's very moist. That's great. I can thoroughly recommend it. Thanks for watching.